And there we go. And it doesn't love that format, so I'm going to change that up. But in the meantime, here, let's do. All right, we are live on Instagram. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. Dr. Glover,
Oh my
welcome
goodness.
to the undisputed heavyweight champion of all things people pleasing and nice guy. I've learned so much from you over the last 3 years, and I've been really blessed to have found your literature and continued the work of kind of becoming what we all know now as the people displeaser, and you've been instrumental in that. So
Well,
I'm honored to have you on
you
the
were
show.
doing you were doing your post longer than 3 years ago, haven't you? I mean, even before you found me, you were already had figured some stuff out about this.
So so kinda, but
Kinda. All right.
yeah. So I had been doing quite a bit, but for the most part, I had figured out kind of the people pleasing mentality and what that meant. But really understanding that through the masculine frame was really a challenge for me. And now having a clearer picture of how that impacts men worldwide and what that's meant to the people that both you and I do quite a lot of business with is has been really important and valuable to me. So I'm very honored to have you on the show, my friend. It's very cool for me. Um, and so here we are. But uh, let's just dive right in. So nice guys are fundamentally dishonest.
That's a good place to start, and that's pretty much the way I started in the book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, which I kind of wanted to get people's attention right away. I think I already got their attention with the title, because um, people pick up a book entitled "No More Mr. Nice Guy," and there's a kind of a paradoxical double meaning
Sure,
in all of that, because most of us have probably sometime or another said, "No more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm not taking it anymore." Probably
sure,
it's just a common phrase. Alice Cooper, made it into a
sure,
song. Um, but at the same time, we think, well, why would somebody write a book teaching men to be not nice? There's already enough not nice guys out there. And, so when you get into the book and talking about the dynamic that I refer to as nice guy syndrome, you call it, people pleasing or the people displeaser. We've all
sure.
got our own, nowadays most people call it simps. It's just that how do I get everybody's approval, make people happy? Um, I think I thought personally, I'm a nice guy. That makes me a good guy. That means everybody should like me and value me. And why doesn't everybody else see the world like I do? And I was
Sure.
trying to be different from my father, who wasn't always such a nice guy. And my mother even raised me. She told me as a child, I'm raising you and your brother to be different from your dad. Now,
Sure.
bless her heart, she apologized for that many years later for both saying it and doing it. She said, I shouldn't have taught you that you shouldn't be like your father. Um, but I was trying to be different from dad, different than all the bad men out there. I'd heard all the women complain about that, all the bad men that only want one thing. Plus, I
Sure.
grew up during the angry feminism of the 60s and 70s. I saw bumper stickers that said, erection's a sign of aggression. Every man's a rapist. And, if we think the whole toxic masculinity thing is kind of harsh now, I think it's just seems that way because we got social media now. We didn't have that back in the 60s and 70s. So I grew up with that. That was my form. So I'll be a nice guy. I'll be different from other men. Like I grew up to please my mother. I'll try to please other women. Then I'll get value from that.
Sure.
And okay, I guess it came to a rude awakening about 2, 3 years into my second marriage when my then wife announced, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. I
Mm,
can't trust you. I can't depend on you. You don't tell me the truth. You're passive aggressive. You don't follow through. And I thought, she goes, you need help. I'm going to leave you if you don't get help. And I thought, well, you're the one who's unhappy all the time. And, nothing's ever good enough for you. And you're always in a bad mood. And you don't want to have sex anymore. I thought, okay, I didn't want to lose her, so I'll go get therapy. And luckily, I landed in some good places. I landed in a 12-step group where I started, I learned about shame and opening up and revealing shame. I got a good therapist. I got into
sure.
a men's group. And I was a marriage therapist at the time. And so I started noticing men coming to me with their wives and girlfriends were saying the same thing I said. I'm a nice guy, one of the nicest guys you ever meet. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. They go to private school. I buy her
Sure.
whatever she wants. It's not good enough. She's never happy. She never wants to have sex anymore. I mean, I thought I could finish her sentences. So I thought this whole nice guy thing was a good paradigm. Why shouldn't we be different than those bad men? But the truth was, there's is coming from something that's referred to as toxic shame, a sense that I'm
Sure.
not okay just as I am. I'm not lovable just as I am. I have to become something different. So, what every nice guy is trying to do is trying to do two things fundamentally. One, become what I think other people want me to be. There's that people pleasing,
Sure.
and hide anything about me that might get a negative reaction. My thoughts, my
Interesting.
feelings, my want, my sexuality. So, those two fundamental life skills, the paradigm, the roadmap that a nice guy follows. I'm going to try to please you to get your approval and hide anything from you that might get your disapproval. There's that
Sure.
people displeaser. Those make us fundamentally dishonest because we're not being us. We're not being true to ourselves. We're not speaking our truth. We're not, living on our terms. We're always we're chameleons. We're always checking the weather to see what direction we go. That's fundamentally dishonest. And then when
Sure.
you add into that, we don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to be pissed off. We don't want to be hurt. We won't do anything authentic if we think it might rock the boat. It might cause a disruption, cause somebody to be upset. And then add to that, we are liars. Nice guys are fundamentally dishonest. I often referred to, I didn't discover this till I got into therapy and started looking at how dishonest I was. But I have a lie coach in my head. And that
Hmm.
lie coach used to, we have a little webinar going on in there all the time. All right, say it this way. Leave that part out. Just don't bring that up. Oh,
Sure.
distract their attention. Oh, if they got one part of that accusation wrong, there gives you the deniability. No, you're wrong. I didn't do that. Well, I'm lying to her. But, and because the thing is, like with my ex wife, she used to accuse me of lying to her. And I go, how does she know I'm lying to her? She's wrong about what she's accusing me of lying about, so I can deny it. But how'd she know I was lying to her? So I had that lie coach that was just coaching every conversation of how to have it. And so one of the earlier things I did in my own personal recovery from nice guy syndrome was every time I heard that lie coach start to, coach me up on how to tell something, how to phrase it, how to, what to leave out, what to bring up,
Hmm.
I'd go to my then wife and say, I was going to lie to you. Here's the story I was going to tell you, and here's the truth. And,
Interesting.
and you know what? She never got upset about that. I used to tell her middle name ought to be overreact because that's what she did in most every situation. But what I found out, and I think you found this out, is that most people, and since I work primarily with men, I'll say, most women can handle a difficult truth if it's the
Hmm.
truth. What they can't handle is the lies, it's the
Right.
distortions, it's the inauthenticity, the lack of integrity. I found most people, everything I was afraid to tell someone the whole truth about, when I just told them the whole truth, they go, okay, thanks for letting me know. When do you think you'll get that done? Or, oh, okay, I'm glad you told me. Um, you know, People just don't have that big reaction that I was always expecting. So whenever that lie coach would say, tell it this way, tell it that way, don't bring that up, leave that out, I just started saying, here's the whole truth. And it's funny
Sure.
how life got so much easier when I just started telling the whole truth. So there's that fundamental dishonesty of the nice guy syndrome.
So did you ever find, and I was curious about this for myself because I look back at my life when I started to understand what you just said, and I realized how many stupid little lies I would create,
Yeah.
like dumb shit, like I didn't go to McDonald's for lunch when I went to McDonald's for
Yeah.
lunch, like
Stupid
literally,
stuff.
right? And it would just, and somehow I look back now and I think, how had I sabotaged my own integrity for years in these little, micro lies that, I mean, nobody gave a shit what I had for lunch,
Yeah. Nobody
right?
gave a shit that you went to lunch.
Right. Right.
But yeah, we laugh at it because I've told all those same lies.
Sure.
That coach would say, "Oh, don't tell her that you went out and had lunch. She might be upset that you went out and had lunch, and she didn't, or whatever." I mean, just What again? It's all around. I might upset somebody, so I better tell it this way. Or somebody might think negatively of me. Like, maybe if you have judgment of eating at McDonald's, you think if you tell anybody that, they'll have judgment of you.
Right.
Most people don't care. They
Yeah.
don't care.
Um,
Now I do. I think McDonald's sucks. So
well, it depends on where you eat it. I've had it in Argentina, and it's magnificent there.
All right, I'll keep that in mind. I'll keep it in mind. I did see the McDonald's. There was a McDonald's in Tokyo where I was staying last week, right next to the hotel. I didn't go eat there. I
It,
did go to the Shake Shack and eat
okay,
at the Shake
I can
Shack.
appreciate the effort on Shake Shack. The
Yeah.
McDonald's is weird in Tokyo, but I mean they have the normal things. I mean they have the burgers and fries, of course, but they also have like a teriyaki sandwich that you actually did miss something
Oh, okay.
there.
Keep
Yeah.
that in mind next time.
So
Do you have to eat it with chopsticks though? That's the thing.
no, no, it's a full blown, and it's like two layers of chicken. I mean, it's a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. So next time.
I'm sold.
Um,
I'm sold.
so when you think of, I've been messing with this idea recently, and I talked a little bit about it on another podcast that we both attended. But um, what are your thoughts on the idea that women are not necessarily built to handle men's emotions and vice versa?
And vice versa. I mean, we're not meant to handle their emotions either. Is
I
that the
don't think
vice
we're
versa part?
particularly adept at it, for one, but
No.
but I don't think the two generally mix, because in a lot of your work you talk about the need for connection with other men, and through my work with you, and even through my own coaching, one of the things I notice is that guys tend to, we over emote to the women in our lives, and it doesn't create a sense of safety. And then the reverse can also be true. So it's almost in this people pleasing vein rather than just the nice guy vein. It,
Yeah.
it almost seems as though having relationships within your own gender is vital to your emotional success.
Yeah. Okay, so let's tread into the always fun territory of making gender generalizations. Um,
Sure.
this is a live stream. We might as well just
Right.
invite, all the
Let's just
snark,
get canceled right now.
all the snarky comments that will come. Um, you know, how I'll frame your question, because it's a good question. Um, I'll just state up front. In general, we are different. In general, men and women are different. I mean, there are many ways statistically you can show the ways that we're different. Are there ways that we're alike? Yeah, a lot of ways. But you take any general bell curve, there's always things that overlap and things that are at the fringes, on the tails of
Sure.
that bell curve that are different. And as much as we live in a culture, I attended grad school in the 1980s, and my feminist teachers taught me in child development course that there is no gender. Gender is a social construct imposed on little babies who are tabula rasas, blank slates, um, and you know there was no evidence to support that teaching. But that teaching has been passed down to lots of school teachers. It's made its way into the whole feminist movement and social media. That there are as many genders as there are people on the planet. I've heard that message gets taught in school systems. There's no wonder that so many young people are confused about who and what are they.
Sure.
And I don't want to get off on too deep into those waters, but to just say, in many significant ways, in general, men are different from women and women are different from men. Um, in general, now there's
Sure.
exceptions to every rule. And children do develop differently according to gender. There's statistically, and research shows that to be true. So, do we do things differently? Often. Do we do things the same? Often as well. And is gender somewhat fluid? Yeah, I believe that it is. I'm energetically a fairly feminine guy. Um, I'm not one of those kind of brash, aggressive, overachieving macho men. I like nice things, and I like to sense the world through my senses, and I like connection and the flow of love. Typically, things that we might identify as more feminine. Um, Now, when I was a marriage therapist, I used to tell couples that came into my office, I'd say this in the first session, the very best thing you guys can do for your marriage is have good same sex friends.
Hmm.
Now, the women are going, yeah, I got that, because they tend to. Women
Right.
tend to keep their friends, even when they get, I mean, I'll make a generalizations. Women may have these ongoing "I hate you, I love you" battles with their best friends. You
Sure.
know, they're constantly back and forth. You know, loving each other, hating each other. Men don't tend to do that so much with their guy friends. We may not talk to each other for 3, 6 years, but when we do, hey, it's like nothing ever changed. We're buddies.
Right.
But when men get into relationship, if we do have guy friends, male relate, we tend to let them go because
Hmm.
we're just focused usually on getting the things done that need to get done. And if that's work, well, we got to focus on work. If it's making our woman happy, it's making our woman happy, spending time with her. If kids come along, it's raising the
Sure.
kids. Whatever leftover time there is, we might watch a ball game or two, but we just, you know, our friends, they're just out of sight, out of mind. I mean, we
Right.
haven't fallen out with them because they're doing the same thing. They get in a relationship, all of a sudden, you don't hear from them so much. I've got a really good friend. I've said over the last few years, I consider him my best friend. We hardly talk now. No falling out, nothing
Right.
wrong, but he went through a divorce, and guess what? He got a girlfriend. And once he got the girlfriend, it is partly on me. I'm busy, all that, but we just don't talk near as much.
Sure.
He's kind of, his world revolves around the women in his life, his daughter and his girlfriend, and still his ex-wife. Um, that's just what we guys do. All right? I don't
Sure.
blame my buddy for that at all. Yeah, we'll cycle back into having more connection. Well, I sent him a clip from a baseball clip because we can always talk about baseball. Um, I just sent him that last night, and so we do need the same sex friends.
Sure.
I always put it in an evolutionary context. All evidence, pointing back to 1.5 million years of tribal evolution. There's kind of the tribe within the tribe. The tribe within the tribe was the women, the older people, the children that were more vulnerable. They tended to huddle up, stay connected. The men, maybe even some of the women that were, could go out. They fought the wars, they hunted, they gathered, they
Sure.
they came back with the food, the furs, and the fucks, and then
Hmm.
the men went out and did it again. We needed to have good teamwork and be cooperative, but we didn't need to be real close, and we didn't need to be real communicative. Fact is better
Right.
that we didn't talk a lot. I suspect the women, the older people, that are left huddling. When are the men coming back? Are we going to eat? Are they coming back? Or who's going to come back?
Sure.
Um, you know, uh, the gossip, the hierarchies, the other women in that tribe within the tribe were both your sisters. You need them, but they're also your well, what's the best word for it? Your competition for the scarce resources that the men were going to bring back. So you
Sure.
may be resented that they seem to get more than you, and you didn't. You've got a kid, you should get more. So there's that constant way of dealing with emotion that I think women evolved with and men evolved a different type. For men being out there hunting, warring, gathering, dealing with the threats of nature, us being a highly emotional probably did not serve us. And us being super expressive of our emotions probably didn't serve us. I know nowadays we kind of hear this sympathetic voice about, oh, culture has taught little boys to repress and hide their feelings, and so they've had to keep them in and repress them. That's why they're so lonely and isolated.
Sure.
I think there's truth to that, but I don't think it's actually the core issue or the whole truth. I think boys just naturally learn as they develop, don't express their feelings. I've raised boys, I've raised girls. The girls are expressive of their feelings nonstop. I used to tell my stepdaughter, just go to your room and close the door. Be as unhappy and as an upset as you want to be. You know, be on the phone as pre-social media, but yeah, be on the phone as much as you want. Write as many notes as you want.
Right.
We just don't want your drama, around the rest of the house. The
Sure.
boys never created drama. They just did stupid shit. You get a call at 2 a.m., you know, you, is this they'd say the name of my stepson. No, I'm his stepdad. I said, who's this? This is the Tacoma Police Department. We've got your son here in custody, and we'll need you to come pick him up at 7 o'clock. And I go, What'd he do? Well, yeah, he did something stupid. That's
Right.
all. Not bad, just stupid. His brain wasn't done developing yet. So I think we do develop very differently. Again, some overlap, but some differences. So if evolution wired women to see the males as the provider, the protectors, and wired us to see the women as who we provide and protect for I think our greatest happiness and sense of security and well-being in a relationship. I think we need to honor some of those ways we're wired. I mean, does that need to rule our life? Do we need to go back and be cavemen and cave women? No, not saying that at
Sure.
all. But I have found in relationship as a marriage therapist over 40 years and having been married a few times myself that my wife does want to, the woman in my life, women want to know what their partner is feeling. And if the guy goes into too deep of a depth of his feeling, does his feeling work with his
Sure.
partner? What typically happens is it kills the polarity and she starts to look like just one of her girlfriends. A
Got it.
girlfriend with a penis, maybe, but not somebody that she wants to fuck or somebody that she feels particularly protected and provided for by. Again,
Sure.
generalizations. Um, and I found that if we men spend too much time listening to their, I, I can't tell you how many times, my ex-wife would wake up and say, "Oh, you wouldn't believe the crazy dream that I had last night." Yeah, I would. It's probably the same crazy dream you wake up and tell me you have pretty much every morning. Or I remember when I first got into therapy, working with a woman therapist, and I said, "I'm just so tired." This is back again in my second marriage,
Sure.
but kind of early in my nice guy recovery. I'd say, "I'm just tired of listening to my wife tell me the same story over and over and over again." And she goes, "Well, you don't have to listen." I go, "Yeah, you do. It's carved in stone. My mother taught me that. You have to listen till the woman's done talking." She goes, "Actually, that's not very loving to just listen because you think you have to, especially if you're trying to fix it so she'll get over it or
Right.
distract her or, you're bored or thinking about something else." And I said, "What am I supposed to do? Just tell her you're not interested." I go, "You can't do that." She goes, "Actually, it's a more loving thing to do." I go, "You don't know my wife. The whole roof's going to get blown off if I told her that."
Sure.
She goes, "Okay." So I still remember this was years ago. This is 30 years ago, maybe. My then wife starts in on a story that I'd already heard multiple times. This is just, the 18th verse of the same song, right? That
Sure.
just kept being repeated because that's kind of what the feminine does. They keep talking about it until they sort things out in their head. We men tend to go into our head and just ruminate about it till we
Mm.
get things sorted out. That doesn't always lead to the best decision making, but I'm not sure talking about things I've often said as a therapist, feelings are overrated, and I think talking about feelings are even higher overrated. Okay, so my therapist is telling me you don't have to listen to her talk. So I finally got the nerve up one time. I'm not saying I did this with impeccability,
Sure.
but she starts in on the 18th verse of the same song, and I said, "Hey, I'm tired. I just don't really have the bandwidth for it right now." She goes, "Okay." That was it. I'm thinking, is the roof coming off anytime soon? And about 45 minutes to an hour later, she came and she said, "Thank you for telling me you weren't available to listen." I'm going, "What?" She goes, "I called a friend and I think I got it all worked out." I go, "Really?" And I'm going, I got thanked for telling her I didn't say I wasn't interested, which would have been the whole truth, right? The
Sure.
lie coach said, "Tell it this way," tell her you don't have the bandwidth. So I thought, you mean it's that easy? If somebody told me that a long time ago, I just said, "I'm not interested." So a trick I learned, I was dating a woman. This is, 15 years ago. Um, and I met her when she sold me shoes at Nordstrom. So we used to meet for a date when she got off work from the mall. There's a Ruth's Chris restaurant right there. It's since closed down in Bellevue, Washington. And they had a great happy hour, this great half-pound cheeseburger and, discount wine and baseball games on, in the bar. And I loved baseball, and so did my girlfriend. She would get off work and come in. She'd been working all day, inner masculine all day. And
Hmm.
she would just be complaining. Oh, the customers this and those fucking Russian Microsoft brides, they're snapping their fingers and pointing at shit and they're on their phone pushing their baby carriages and my coworkers and management. And she's just, like this. And I'm thinking, hey, we're on a date. This happy hour. Or she goes, and
Sure.
my mother called me this today. You wouldn't believe what my mother said. I go, I know what your mother said. She said you need to get a real career. I know because I'd heard how many times,
Sure.
when she was upset about her mother. So what I started doing is I put my iPhone on the bar. I said, you're on the clock. You got 5 minutes and you got my undivided attention for 5 minutes. And I said, and when the 5 minutes are up, we're going to order a cheeseburger. We're going to have a great glass of wine and we're going to watch baseball. Right. And she would start, and you know what? She couldn't fill the 5 minutes.
Hmm.
She would get 2-3 minutes in and goes, that's it. I'm done talking. She goes, what baseball game's on? Now it's time to watch baseball and drink a glass of wine and have a burger.
Sure.
Because I created a container that she'd have my undivided attention for 5 minutes. And she just wanted to get the basic complaint out and be done. She didn't actually want to stay in a bad mood complaining about it for hours when there's baseball, Merlot and a hamburger waiting.
Right.
So I found that, yes, my woman wants to know what's on my mind. Does she want me? Does she want to be my emotional tampon or my therapist? No. I do that work with my guy friends. I have men in my
Sure.
life that I tell everything to, right? And then I
Right.
bring I bring the upper level version to my wife and let her know. I'm not leaving anything out of importance. There's no, you know, there's no lie in it. I'm just giving her the
Right.
basic information. I've done the feeling work, right?
Sure.
And with my wife, somebody asked me a few years ago, Robert, why did you marry a woman that doesn't speak the same language as you? I said, because I don't have to listen to her talk so much.
Mhm.
Which, unfortunately, as my Spanish got better, I got to hear more of the drama stories because I actually understood more of it. So, no, we're not wired as men to sit and listen as their girlfriends do, of filling in their sentences, completing their sentences for them, and going, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about," and they tell a story that matches it. They're wired to get all those words out, and then they get clarity. Again, we're
Hmm.
wired to keep them all in, and hopefully we get some kind of clarity.
Sure.
So we are different, and that's okay. And I think we can communicate different and still be there and be attentive and know the depth of truth of who our partner is. And then, then we can bring kind of the whole Esther Perel version of this in, that if we do know each other way too well, it's going to kill the sexual polarity. So, I mean, there's a
Hmm.
whole nother thread that we could take to that. So, yes, I do think that in general, men and women tend to communicate different, and we need to honor that and respect it and work with it in powerful, conscious ways in our relationships.
So for a couple that might be listening, although I would say that our audiences can tend to be relatively dude centric, but if there's a couple listening or somebody that can benefit from it, I'm curious, in the vein of polarity and sexual tension, once it's kind of gone or it's struggling, what do you do to revitalize
Oh, that's like maybe a whole book right there in itself. That's
it? You're welcome.
that's
You're welcome. You can write that
that's
one,
that's a
Doc. I,
serious. Yeah,
I got
actually,
other shit to
I'm
do.
about three-quarters of the way through that
Oh,
one.
good.
You know, I first got introduced to this whole idea of polarity, sexual tension, with David Data,
Hmm.
20 some years ago when I'd say I stumbled onto his book, The Way of the Superior Man, but actually a lot of my clients kept recommending I read it. I finally got around to reading it and told the
Sure.
woman I was dating at the time, I found my new Bible. And I think it's just a great bookend with No More Mr. Nice Guy. Very different books. In fact, I just went to a David Data workshop 3 weeks ago in Florida.
Hmm.
Um, and so he talks a lot about the sexual polarity, masculine and feminine energies. And the way I frame it is I put it in terms of what I call emotional tension. That in general, female creatures, women, feminine identified creatures need emotional tension to feel attraction, arousal, and attachment long term to a man or to a partner. I mean,
Sure.
I'll say up front, gay men and lesbian women understand this shit better than heterosexual people do. Because
Hmm.
we've been kind of brainwashed that we're all equal and we have to do everything equal and we're just the same. Gay men and lesbians get that there has to be a top and a bottom, a pitcher and a catcher, a doer and a done to, a dom, a sub, or there is nothing happens. Right?
Sure.
Somebody's got to be the doer and somebody's got to be done too. Now, beautifully, that can be reciprocal. It can go back and forth. But
Sure.
again, we straight couples have kind of, drank the Kool-Aid that, oh, we're exactly the same. We're going to do everything the same. So we don't tend to experience the kind of sexual polarity and tension that gay men and lesbian women do. I mean, they get
Interesting.
it. They get it. Um, in the gay community, you know who the dude is and you know who the not dude is. In lesbian community, you know who the dyke is and who the butch is and who isn't. They know. I mean, they don't have to have it explained.
Oh my God.
Well,
Um,
I get we straight people, sometimes get
right.
uncomfortable with this, but
Well,
that,
I mean, it is fascinating because I was actually going to ask that because I've worked with a fair amount of gay men who really identified with your work and identified with my work.
yeah,
Um, and how does this show up for them? Because I think we talk, I think in particular when guys like I get you on a channel, I mean, we tend to go hard into, straight
well,
relationships,
this yeah,
but
this
I think,
we're heterosexual
yeah,
and straight, so that's where we talk.
sure.
You know, I I live in a very gay friendly town. I live in
Hmm.
Puerto Vallarta. Um, Gay men are really good at hanging out in the cool places and having cool things to do. They're just I mean it's
There's
just part
no
of
question about that.
part of the gay culture.
Hmm.
I honestly, as a straight man, have often had envy of gay men that they got a tribe. They got a tribe. They go many cool places in the world, and they know who their tribe is automatically.
Right.
Beyond sex, um, and so I I even think that's one of the appeals of being a gay man. You've got
Hmm.
tribe. Most straight men don't. I mean, again, we're missing on a lot of stuff. So I live in a very gay friendly town.
Sure.
Lots of gay men, especially in the part of town I used to live in before I got married and bought a home. And most of my male friends were gay. I've been to a lot of great gay parties. When my wife and I go out, we want to go to a club. We go to a gay club. Um, so they get it. And
Sure.
one gay guy was telling me one time, he says, when a gay man starts up a conversation with another gay man, they're in a club, they're in a bar, whatever. They're not, if it's a straight conversation, we'd be thinking, well, is there going to be, enough of a match that this person wants to go home with me? That's not
Sure.
what the gay men are talking about. They're talking about, are you a top or a bottom? Now, they probably already have figured it out because they signal those things to
Sure.
each other. And because if a person, if they if they're a bottom, they're a bottom, right?
Right.
If they're a top, they're a top. They're not going, well, I could bend for you. I mean, they might try, but they don't. So
Right.
they're just discussing who's top, who's bottom. They're just laying that groundwork. I mean, it's already decided if they match, top
Sure.
bottom polarity, masculine, feminine, pitcher, catcher, dom, sub, whatever you want to call it. If they match, okay, there's potential there. If they don't, they're going to go talk to somebody else, even if they thought that person was attractive or whatever. They're going to go talk to someone else. That's how that plays out for them. They just have that clarity around which role they play in the sexual encounter, right? And
Sure.
and and even in their relationships. You know, whenever we're around a gay couple, because there's a lot here in town, we have a lot of gay friends. My
Sure.
wife will go, "Who do you think's the girl? Who's the guy?" We'll
Hmm.
both kind of chat about, which one's the dude and which one's not in that relationship because they do. That's clear. Again, in
Right.
heterosexual relationships, I see so many couples, especially younger couples nowadays, where the woman is obviously in charge. She's walking in front, she's going up and, telling the host is, we want this table, we want the guys tagging along behind. And I'm looking, I go,
Sure.
I think the guy spent more time, getting ready than the woman did. He's got his ponytail and his streaked hair and his perfect sunglasses, in his hair. And I'm,
Sure.
looking at that's their polarity. Now, that can work. It can work really well as long as you got polarity. You got something to go with. It doesn't matter, who's the identified masculine, who's the identified feminine. As
Sure.
long as you've got a default, and in my mind, if you've got a default masculine character, The default masculine gets the ball rolling. He polarizes the situation, and the default feminine then responds to it. So masculine does, feminine is done too. Now, that can be very reciprocal. In fact, I found that it typically is in my relationships. The women in my life have always been really strong women. My wife is just a very strong woman. Grew up in poverty, 8 out of 10 kids in Guadalajara, Mexico, learned to fight at an early age. She goes to the gym 2 hours a day. She's done Muay Thai, kickboxing. I grew up, you know, lower middle class family, suburb of Seattle, the bunch of
Sure.
white bread Boeing engineer families. I never had to
Right.
fight for anything. So she's tough. She's strong. We need things taken care of. When we needed a car, she went and bought the car because if I go, I get the gringo price on it.
Mhm.
So she can get a lot of shit done, but she loves it when I set the tone and lead. When I say, you know, hey, let's go do this. She doesn't want me to say, where do you want to go tonight? She wants me to show up with a plan. We walk in a restaurant down here in Mexico. They always hand her a menu and say, should I give him a menu in English? And she always says, he's in Mexico. He'll order in Spanish. And then they give her the menu and she hands it back and said, he's my boss. He'll order for me. And then I always
Mm.
say, yeah, I get to be the boss when she says I can. And everybody laughs at that.
Right.
It's the running joke.
Sure.
And then she wants me to order for her. She wants me to, you know, I know what she likes, but she
Sure.
likes feeling I'm the man. I'll set the tone. I'll order. Can she order for herself? Yeah. But you know, I also taught her, wait for me, open the door. She always, you know, always open the door for her,
Sure.
getting in and out of the car. Those aren't, you know, demeaning or misogynistic things. They're just polarity. They're the dance.
Right.
They're the game that people play in order to enough sense of difference between us that there's a
Sure.
flow of energy. It's like two magnets. If you put the two ends of the same magnet together, they push each other apart. You put opposite ends together, they attract, they connect.
Mhm.
That's all we're trying to create. It doesn't matter who plays what role, but there does have to be the opposite ends, even if you switch back and forth, you know, which opposite end is which. There's got to be some polarity there. And in my experience, whether it's lesbians, gay men, straight couples, there's got to be a default masculine pole to actually polarize the other. And
Sure.
now we did the gay thing. We can come back to the question of what do we do once that's gone, right?
Right.
And the reason why that typically goes is that the default masculine pole quits doing their job. They
Mm.
quit leading, they quit making decisions. They maybe get, like you say, too much into their emotions and they're polarizing their partner into their masculine of having to solve
Sure.
problems for them. Maybe they're not living with purpose. You know, you had the privilege of being on Chris Williamson just a couple months ago.
I did.
When I was on the show, I shared a meme that I like to share that the feminine is highly attracted to a man who's comfortable in his own skin, knows where he's going, and looks like he's having a good time going there. And
Mhm.
Chris loved that a lot. And he loved it so much, he shared that with Alex Harmozy on an interview that came out the same week that my interview came
Sure.
out. And him and Alex just got riffing on that thing. And Alex going, yeah, you know, that's really a great model because he could actually be comfortable in his own skin. And even if he doesn't have the other two, he's really can still be a pretty cool guy. And even if you have the third, but not the first two. So Alex just really got lit up around that whole thing.
Sure.
That's the polarity. When that masculine pole, when the dude, however we define the dude, is comfortable in his own skin, right? He's not carrying a bunch of anxiety around. He's not carrying a bunch of shame around. He likes himself, living life on his terms. He knows where he's going. He's got purpose. He's got passion. He's on mission in
Sure.
life. And he looks like he's having a good time going there. Yeah, who doesn't want to hang out with that? That's amazingly polarizing. And I find the reason that the polarity, the positive emotional tension, I call it, often leaves relationships is the default masculine pole is not comfortable in their own skin, is not on mission, on purpose, and not having a good time, and not giving his partner something to follow. There's no
Sure.
leadership there. And I say that a woman can't follow where the man doesn't lead. Now, again, we can reverse that. It doesn't matter who is the default masculine, but you got to have it. And probably it's best if both people agree on who that is. If both people are battling, yeah, no,
Sure.
I want to be the dude. No, I'm the dude. No, I get to, no. That's probably not going to play real well.
Sure. I want to shift gears for a second because I I've been I've been thinking of this idea. Over the last few years, we've seen a few of these kind of red pill, manosphere influencers kind of come and go. Not the least of which, of course, are the Tate brothers. And
Have they gone somewhere?
I mean, they just kind of disappeared for a while.
Oh, okay.
They've seemingly returned now that they've come back to the
Okay.
United States. Um,
Oh, they're in
but
the
even
U.S. That's how much I follow that kind. You know what? Here, I'll just say this. One thing that I've actually seen, I saw this with pickup. A lot of the early pickup gurus, Neil Strauss, and a lot of
sure,
them. A lot of them actually matured over time and became more interested in more like social dynamics than they were in just like simple
sure,
pickup tricks. And you know what? That's not also that unusual in the red pill community. People come into it, there's a certain appeal to it, and then they kind of outgrow it. And even a lot of the red pill people who are kind of the red pill influencers kind of outgrow it. They kind of
sure,
mature when they realize everything isn't so simple and black and white, and actually we don't need to weaponize this stuff against women, and we don't need to
sure.
marginalize other men. Actually, so maybe some come and go, maybe some actually grow up.
Well, I have noticed that. I was so whether Neil remembers me or not remains to be seen. But I did quite a lot of work with him many years ago. I was in one of his academies, and
Cool.
I feel like every good life coach that's a guy starts out in the pickup community at some at some level.
Maybe not everyone, but it's
Right.
not unusual. And even like Neil, I've heard him say he's not real proud of the game anymore, but I suspect he still gets the royalty checks. So
No, I'm
I
sure he's
wouldn't
not
say
giving
that.
those away. Yeah, but and not for nothing, that book was uh, you know, instrumental in many ways in
It was
helping
for
me,
me.
right, becoming formative and thinking like, okay, well, maybe there is something to this. Maybe there is a part of me that should be prizeworthy. Maybe there is a part of me that can be better. And I think I got more out of that um, than just the, kind of what met the eye, of
Yeah,
course, which
I,
was
I like the game better than I like the truth. I'm not a big fan of his book, The Truth, but the game, I
yeah.
never identified as pickup, but I thought it was a good book.
So the question I have in this red pill vein is that I've noticed I started to listen to it with a different ear. And I was listening for, what I heard was more victimhood. And I
Oh yeah,
think, the difference between you have to be a high value man to go and attract high value women and saying something like, well, only guys who make a lot of money in a room who you get laid is the same thing. So
yeah.
I feel like it's just victimhood rebranded. And that brings me to a statistic that I've found interesting that I feel like a lot of guys bring up when they get you on the show, which is kind of loneliness in men report, which is a
Hmm.
survey done by American Life in 2021. Says 63% of all men report being chronically lonely, and in contrast to women, it's 49%. And then the number of men who say they have no close friends has
Yeah,
quadrupled since 1990. You know all these stats,
yeah.
right? And I'm curious when because I don't know that we ought to give a shit. I think the most important thing that we can say to men who are feeling lonely is go make friends. And there's really no clear path for doing that. So how do you suggest that men begin to create meaningful friendships, especially men who are by and large going to college less, who are creating less community at work through, kind of external
Mm.
workforce, who we're just not as connected.
Yeah.
So where do you suggest they go find people like that? Like, where do you connect?
Okay. Um, yeah, I think statistically things have changed. I'll go back to what I was talking about earlier, just from an evolutionary point of view. Our forefathers, 1.5 years, were tribal. They had built-in connection. All
Sure.
right. They had their band of
Right.
brothers. Even for the last 10,000 years, under what we tend to call the patriarchy, or I call it the ownership model, um, where we quit being communal, men still connected with men. I would say probably up until 100, less than 150 years ago, men still primarily just hung out with men.
Hmm.
If you were in an agrarian society, boys grew up around their father. They
Sure.
grew up often around grandfather, uncles, cousins, and I'm not preaching, gender roles like women need to do this because they're women, men need to do this because they're men.
Sure.
But back in the day, the women did what they did, in the house, and they cooked and cleaned and made clothes, and the men went
Sure.
out, and was there crossover? Yeah. Were the women out there, getting eggs from under the chickens as well? Sure. So I'm
Sure.
not preaching gender roles. I'm just talking about what existed forever. So even when we left that communal tribal, boys still, they trained with a blacksmith. They grew up around their dad. They
Sure.
learned how to live in the masculine world, right? And and when you know our forefathers left the farm and moved to the city and went to work in a factory, it was still primarily just men, and there were
Sure.
male fraternity programs, and it wasn't till World War II, so again, less than 100 years ago, that men went off to war, women left home, went into the factories to build the airplanes and the bombs, and worked to work in hospitals, and then when the men came
Sure.
back from war, some of the women went back to being housewives, but not all. And then
Hmm.
feminism came along and started telling women, you know, being married, being a housewife, being a mother is demeaning. You need to have a career in order to have meaning. Don't be dependent on a man. So
Sure.
I mean, things shifted. And again, I'm not preaching this is good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. It shifted.
Sure.
And so men's ready-made groups have dissolved. It's not the workplace so much anymore.
Sure.
Um, not the military so much anymore. It's not the
Sure.
farm. It's certainly not the tribe anymore. And as I said, women tend to be pretty good at keeping the relationships alive.
Mm.
They're good at, they just in general are good at it. Men, we just don't have it on the forefront of what's most
Sure.
important to us. And so it slides to other things that we get caught up in, and we think are more important in the moment. And what happens, I think, especially with a lot of younger men growing up, is that I grew up playing sports, and I grew up still in an era where men had ways to go connect, go watch a baseball
Sure.
game together, stuff like that. The younger men have grown up where the boys and girls, as a group, junior high, high school, they go hang out as a group, right? Boys and girls together, and often it's the
Sure.
girls kind of running the show of what we
Hmm.
do, and the boys just tag along. And so a lot of young men have never gotten out of what I call the nursery, where they're just
Sure.
hanging out, playing video games, surfing, the internet, jerking off to porn, watching Netflix. Um, everything gets pushed to them. Social media, they can even order their food from Uber Eats, and they don't have to do a goddamn thing to survive. So there's no masculine pull. And and
Sure.
and so if you can just be on, World of Warcraft till 2 in the morning, or playing video games, or on social media, you have an illusion that you might be connected to some other live people, but
Sure.
you're not. You're not really. And so what happens for most men, whether they're young, middle age, my age, is when they think of connection, when they think of love, when they think of not being alone, if they're straight, they think of a woman. They think of women.
Hmm.
I got to get a girlfriend. Or maybe they're in a relationship and they feel alone because their partner maybe isn't paying much attention to them. Whatever.
Sure.
We tend to think of the opposite sex. That's where I'll go find connection and love. I'm actually a big believer that the depth of connection for men is going to come from other men.
Mm.
That, if we take it from a purely polarity way, if we take kind of David Data's model of the masculine doing, the feminine doing done too, and the masculine lives for mastery, feminine lives for connection, flow of love. If the feminine in us, in women, is the seeker, the consumer of love, to have polarity, the masculine must be the source of love. And
Mm.
when I kind of made that distinction in my own mind, maybe 5, 6 years ago, it started dawning on me why I always felt more complete, more nurtured, more happy when I was around men. And
Mm.
when I was seeking that from women, I was always stressed, anxious, checking the weather. She in a good mood, bad mood. She like me today, not like me today. And
Sure.
I found, and I learned this in my second marriage when I started taking road trips with guys to go to watch baseball games. It wasn't even about being conscious men. We were just being
Sure.
dumb shit men, just going to
Right.
watch a baseball game, telling the same damn joke over and over and over again,
Sure.
And I'd come home, and my then wife, who never wanted to have sex with me, say, I'm really attracted to you when you come back. Why?
Hmm.
Well, I was out of the house for a while, but I was just around men. I got nourished and filled with men, and I didn't come home empty and needy, wanting to hook up a hose to her and her love me and appreciate me and want to have sex with me so I could feel okay. So
Sure.
since I've been preaching for the last 4 or 5 years to men that the masculine is the source of love. If you want to feel true depth of love, you need connection with men. Now, most of
Sure.
us men have a probably two memes about men in general. One, they're all jerks, they're all unsafe, they're all bullies, they're all because maybe we got bullied as a kid, maybe dad was a bully, maybe we've heard women complain about men or all this, all that. Our
Sure.
moms complained about. So we have men in that category. They're jerks, they're bullies, they're unsafe.
Sure.
I hear a lot of men with that meme. The other meme that a lot of men have is, oh, men are so shallow. They just want to talk sports and women and watch games and drink booze and shit like that.
Sure.
And they go, oh, I'd rather talk to the women. It's more interesting. I go, no, you just get more validation from the women because you listen to them. But I've found that both of those memes of men, while there might be some truth to both of them, they're not the
Sure.
truth. I have found personally that men again, when I'm around men, there's so much more potential for just depth. There's
Sure.
no call what I'm trying to maintain the possibility of availability like we do with women. Oh, I got to keep her in a good mood, so maybe she'll want to have sex. With men, we don't give a fuck, so we can be more ourselves, more real. I'll give you an
Hmm.
example. I was in Japan uh, last week speaking at a group of entrepreneurs. I got my expenses paid to go speak for an
Sure.
hour. I gave more value than just an hour's worth, but I kind of
Sure.
put it in that. And you know what? I got there and I asked and the group was mainly men, about
Okay.
45 guys, maybe there were half a dozen women, but it was mostly dudes. And I said, how can I serve you? What do you want me to talk about tomorrow? And he goes, well, we chatted about it. And I kept thinking about how vulnerable can I get these guys? Are they here just to talk about business, marketing, conversion numbers,
Sure.
ROI, and I thought, I'm going to try. So I began my talk with, I said, go find two people you don't know. I mean, everybody's going to get 2 minutes. So 6 minutes total in these triads. And I want you to share someplace in life where you're stuck, unhappy, underperforming, things aren't going well for you
Sure.
with two strangers. Now, an entrepreneur ski retreat in Japan could easily be a dick swinging contest. Oh, I've
Sure.
got this many conversions. I made this many figures last year. I'm this, I'm that. I didn't know how deep these guys could go. So I
Sure.
started with that. And so we came back and talked about it. And they were all I had to yell at them basically to get them to come back out of their triads because they were so engaged with each other. Then I said, all right, what were the main things you guys found out about each other? Well, there's some people are feeling unhappy around love. Some people are in relationships that aren't working. Some people are in debt. Some people are just stressed because they work too much. Some people are burned out. They shared this stuff with each other, strangers.
Sure.
Then I said, okay, we're going to divide you up into like 6 groups. All of you looking for love, come over here in this corner. All of you who your relationships aren't working so well, go get over there. All of you who are dealing with financial stresses, go over there. Everybody
Sure.
burnout over here. Everybody health issues over here. And they broke them up in about 6, 7 groups, gave them about 20 minutes to just get to know each other now because you're going to be around each other for the next 8 days. Again, I couldn't get these guys to come back when time was up. They
Hmm.
were so engaged. And I watched over the next 8 days this primarily men just go deep with each other. They're online on a forum, cracking jokes, of course, but getting real
Sure.
with each other, engaging in activities, talking about life, being real, helping each other, having long meals, sharing, going deep. And the guy that put on the whole program said, Robert, that was brilliant. You've got them connected and vulnerable. I said, I had no idea how it would go, how deep we could take them. But I said, even when I was about to give the talk, I said, I don't know where this is going, but I'm just going to
Sure.
try something. So here's what I found. Put a bunch of entrepreneurs that could have easily gone into just talking about numbers and stats. It gave them a chance to talk about what was real in their life, and they took the chance. They opened
Hmm.
up. They got real, right? So that's where I'm just such a big believer that we men can get real. We do get real. You know, You run programs for men. I run programs for men, and uh, I just got a message from a guy in my men's program yesterday, and let me just call it up. I pull it up real quick. Let me just read the quote. He said, Robert, what you've created with Integration Nation, that's my men's program,
Mhm.
a space where men who might have remained strangers come together in brotherhood, is beyond anything I could have imagined. Never thought I'd find myself in something like this, and now that I am, is transforming me.
Mhm.
All right, that's what I keep hearing from men. When you give them an actual safe place, whether it's an entrepreneur's ski event in
Sure.
Japan, a virtual program, a men's group, you're coming back down here to Puerto Vallarta in 2 weeks with a group of guys, strangers that you met a year ago at my
Mhm.
house at a workshop, and this group of I think 7 of you have stayed connected for the last year. 7 strangers who showed up at my house not knowing each other
Yep.
so much that you all decided, let's do it again. Let's come back. Same group of guys coming back. So I'm convinced if you create the container and give men the opportunity to be vulnerable with each other, share where they're struggling, share what's not working, share their successes and their joys,
Sure.
their wins, their brags, and that inspires other men to do the same, to share where they're struggling. And then all of a sudden, 7 guys that you didn't know that you were maybe judging or measuring, well, he seems like a dick, or he talks too much. I wish he hadn't come. Or he
Sure.
reminds me of, all of a sudden, a day and a half later, you're like frat brothers that you've known for 20 years and you love each other deeply. Men you didn't know a day and a
Sure.
half before. So I think there's great power in that. And I'm actually very optimistic because when I went looking for my first men's group 30 years ago, there was the mythopoetic movement, with Iron Blonde, Iron John, Robert Bly. Go out
Sure.
in the woods, hold the stick, beat a drum, say ho, that kind of stuff. I did that. But that's about all there was. And it was kind of pre-internet. So any program that did exist was just word of
Sure.
mouth. Nowadays, there are so many amazing coaches out there, people like you, people on Instagram, people on YouTube, people running, men's retreats, men's programs, men's pro courses. And I mean, there's some shit out there, but there's so much good stuff out there as well that I'm optimistic. I'm just thrilled with just the opportunities men have to connect with other men. And we're thriving. I've been saying for a while, I think there's a worldwide men's movement happening that, unless you have the right lenses, you might not see that for what it is.
Sure.
And here's what I see: men maybe go join, they go attend a pickup boot camp, thinking they want to go pick up women.
Yep.
Maybe they'll go join a jujitsu class. They want to go learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is very popular among men
Mhm.
right now. Maybe they go to their church divorce recovery group because they're going
Sure.
through divorce. Maybe they go to a 12-step group for some addiction recovery and join the
Sure.
stag group that's just guys. And what's happening is it looks like they're going to learn how to pick up women, or they're going to learn jujitsu, or they're going to get sober, or they're going to get through a divorce. What
Mhm.
ends up happening is they find tribe. They find other men who are just like them, and they start relating and connecting. And maybe one of them says, hey, have you read this book, or have you heard of this program, or do you ever listen
Sure.
to this podcast? And it doesn't matter. It could be Peter Attia, Chris Williamson, Stephen Bartlett, you, me, David Data. There's just so much. It could even be Red Pill for that matter. There's just so
Sure.
much out there that men now, without knowing it, are are flocking towards groups
Right.
basically of other men that now start leveling their up, not just in terms of jujitsu or addiction recovery or learn how to pick up
Sure.
women. The guys in the dating pickup boot camp, they're going out, and yeah, the goal, the prize is to go learn how to talk to women. But guess what? They're doing it with 4 or 5 other dudes and having a
Right.
good time. You know,
Yep.
so I think there's a tremendous transition happening right now for men around the world, where even if we aren't saying I need to find a men's group or a men's program, we unconsciously are being led to go find things that happen to have a bunch of men.
Sure.
And now we get connected and our life starts leveling up in so many powerful ways. That was a long
That's
answer, wasn't it?
that was a great answer. It
Man,
was a very very
I've
good. It
never
was a good one. Good
I've
one.
never seen you that patient, man. You brought your A game on that
Yeah,
one.
well, it's interesting, and I haven't used my vape yet, so that's also good. But
And I promised I wouldn't give you. I promised myself I wouldn't give you shit if you vape during the call.
uh, but I'm always fascinated by the way that men connect because I think to your point that you made earlier, which is, if women are to receive love and warmth, then of course we must be the source energy of that, or the masculine must be. And I think what you just described kind of, paints that picture perfectly. Is that you can put 10 dudes in a room that have one thing in common, and we'll be best friends forever.
Hmm.
And if my best friend from high school called me tomorrow and said, "Hey, can we go get a coffee?" we- I'd crack the same jokes I did 15 years ago. Um,
You were in high school just 15 years ago.
no, God.
Oh, when
Yeah,
you continued to crack the same jokes with
yeah,
your best friend from high
yeah.
school 15
Like every
years ago.
15 years when I see him, then I
Yeah,
crack the
crack the
same
same
jokes.
jokes. Yeah.
Um, and so I think this male loneliness epidemic is a manufactured issue.
I wrote a blog article about that a few months back, and I think to m- yeah, I agree with you very much. So I think it's real,
Hmm.
and I think that some of it is due to circumstance, maybe that
Sure,
men have never been initiated into a tribe, and self-initiation is possible, but it's more challenging.
sure,
And just so many men out there, again, just haven't been led into initiation that always involves other men, other masterful men, and they learn to trust and open up to and be vulnerable with other men. They just haven't had the experience. And, I've had a conversation with a number of people is how do you help a man who's never experienced just that secret sauce of being
sure.
vulnerable in a group with other men, kind of like, when you guys all came to my house last year. You can't explain that or describe
Mm-mm.
it in advance to somebody who's never had it. It'd be like describing a sunset to somebody who's never seen a sunset, or what does a banana taste like to somebody who's never tasted a banana.
Sure.
What does it feel like to face your fear, get real, tell shit you don't want to tell about you,
Right.
be still with that, hear people's feedback, and receive their love and their concern and their empathy, and they share similar stuff. So you find out you're not alone, and you realize you actually give a shit about them. How do you describe that to somebody who's never had it? I'm actually still not good at it. Excuse me.
Sure.
But I know I got to get better at describing that secret sauce because I'm on a mission. I really do believe I'm on task, that my fate is to carry this mission to the men of the world to say we need other men. We need
Sure.
this depth of connection. So whether it's using good marketing strategy, sincerity, authenticity, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube,
Sure.
however it gets done, we men, you and I, we've got to keep getting better at helping the uninitiated man get a flavor, get a taste, get a
Right.
picture, get an idea of what it might be like, especially if he's in those categories of men are unsafe, men are jerks, men are dangerous, men are bad, men are evil,
Right.
men are like my dad, or they're like, oh, men are shallow, they only want to talk about sports, objectify women, and drink. I mean, if
Sure.
that's our meme around men, there's walls we got to break through to say, it is so much more, is so
Right.
much more, is so much deeper. And how are they going to know what that feels like until we actually get them in a room, get them on a call, get them into a container of some sort where they actually do risk being vulnerable, being real, talking
Sure.
about things they don't want to tell anybody about, um, and listening to other men talk about their struggles. I mean, our work's cut out for us, but the good news is I see it happening. I see it working. Um, and one really cool thing is I think men being so into podcasts, and there
Hmm.
are so many good podcasts out there. that, good interviewers that I think are making a big difference in the world. I mean, we probably all have our favorites, but whether it's, a Tim Ferriss, a Chris Williamson, a Stephen Bartlett, a Peter
Sure.
Attia, or, whoever it might be, there's just so many, good messengers out there spreading the word.
So one last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. What's your favorite thing that you've learned in the last 12 months?
Last 12 months.
Like when you look back on the year and you're like,
hmm
I'm really glad I figured that out.
Counting
What's that thing?
macros. Counting
Counting.
macros.
That's an awesome answer. Say
know-
more.
Now you probably didn't see that one coming.
No, I did not.
It might have been. I think it was the workshop you were.
It
in.
was. It was Eric, our buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, and David, I said we did a project called Cooperative Reciprocal Relationships, where we
Mhm.
identify what are the resources, relationships we have in our life that serve us and fill our bucket
Mhm.
right now. Second part was what are we missing that we need to add to our life to be fully functioning, full. Third one is what ones do we need to pair off from our life. And
Yeah.
I said on my page too, I need to find a nutrition coach because I've been doing I think an 8-week exercise
Sure.
program. I'd seen some good results. And yeah, two guys raised their hand and said, I know one, I know one. So I contacted both of them, interviewed them both, picked one. Um, I got on the phone with her for my first call and I said, listen, I said, I don't want to count calories. I don't want to count macros. Just give me a diet I can live with and I'll just follow it. And she said, we're not going to do it that way. So that's why we hire a coach because if we were left to our own, we'd keep doing what we've always done and
Sure.
we'd keep getting what we always got. So I mean, she got me on the app, MyFitnessPal, gave me targets to shoot for with protein, fat, carbs. We kept adjusting it over time. She gave me a ridiculously high protein target of 200 grams of protein a day. That's bodybuilder. Yeah, your eyes go. That's bodybuilder
Yeah.
level. She says,
It's so
Robert,
much food.
as you get older, you need it. It's a lot of food. And as Chris Williams says on some of his little ads, nobody ever hits their protein, numbers by accident. It's got
Right.
to be very conscious eating. And, so I started using the app, counting the macros, found out it's actually really easy, especially if you
Hmm.
prepare your own food. You go to a
Sure.
restaurant, no, not easy.
Sure.
But, I mean, you scan barcodes, keep track of what you ate yesterday. And I lost several kilos. I'm now carrying the same weight I was carrying in my 30s.
Wow.
And I continue to work with her. She's turned into more of a life coach,
Sure.
just supporting. She loves what I do in the world. I just told her when I was going to Florida to do a David Data workshop, and then I was going to Japan. And I was going to go to David Singer's, who wrote the Surrender Experiment and
Hmm.
Untethered Soul. I was going to go to his compound and hear him talk. She goes, "Oh, I love David Data. I love his book. I love Michael Singer too." So, I mean, she knows the world that I'm in. She's very
Sure.
aware of the whole conscious process. So, I'd say I'm coming up probably on 12 months.
It's literally a year.
Yeah, coming up on
Yep.
a year of counting macros. When I was traveling to Japan, I didn't. I ate a lot of sushi.
Sure.
But yesterday I'm back home. I got the app out. I started counting macros again yesterday because you can kind of lose track if you don't.
Sure.
And to me, it became like just a puzzle, just kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, a word puzzle. Just how do I weave all this together and make sure I hit my protein goals? And keeping the fat and carbs has not been a problem. Keeping those down, but hitting
Sure.
the protein, that's work.
Yes.
And
That's you're not wrong about that.
so
Um,
that's been my big takeaway for the last 12 months.
well, that's amazing. Dr. Robert Glover, I've come to know you as a friend and a mentor, and I'm grateful that you decided to play the game with me today. You're the very first person I've ever interviewed like this in this style. So who knows? Maybe I have a career as a podcaster
You
coming.
might you teed it up well, and you let me talk a lot, so you might have a future.
Well, where can I tell people to go find you?
Then go to integrationnation.net for my membership program. Then go to drglover.com, which has my courses and workshops. That's under construction, but it'll be in pretty good shape pretty soon. Then follow us on YouTube and on Instagram, and I can give you all of that information.
Sure. Newly on
Instagram,
Instagram at Dr. Glover Official. Is it?
is it
Is it?
Robert Glover Official. It's one
Yep,
of those
it's
two.
I think it's Robert Glover Official is
I
correct.
better get those memorized as well.
Sure.
And yeah, YouTube we've been doing for about a year now, and Instagram we've been on it for a month or two, and having fun, having fun.
That's good.
So I'll give you all those links. You can post them in the show notes, as they always say.
Well, I will do it. Dr. Glover, thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to doing this again.
Nick, fun to hang out with you.